dot now. So I think this is a good time to officially start and maybe park the football chat a little bit for some of it. So we did have about 30 people signing up. So yeah, people feel free to have your cameras on or off. It's going to be kind of watching a bit of a chat with me and Ashley. I'm going to pose the questions that you've already sent in. Thank you to everyone who sent some questions in. That we've actually got quite a lot of questions, which I know you're going to be surprised about. And then if people want to put questions in the chat, if people want to jump in maybe a bit later on and ask questions, then that would be great too. We are recording today. So I'm going to send it out to everyone who's here, like everyone that's signed up that maybe hasn't been able to actually make it today as well. Thank you so much to Ashley Baxter for joining us and answering our freelance insurance questions. I've known Ashley for about a year. She's an amazing person. She was interviewed for the first issue of the magazine. She is a dog lover, a Rangers lover. If you do want to get insurance, that genuinely does feel like there's a person behind it, because there really is, who actually really does care, because she really does, then I would recommend With Jack. I am with Jack. But yeah, we're going to talk more generally about insurance today, and Ashley's just going to like help demystify it for us, and answer kind of all the explain it to us like we're 5. That's what we would like. But I think it'd be a good place to start, because you haven't always been an insurance geek. You were a freelance photographer. So do you want to tell us like a little bit about your kind of journey from freelancer to founder of an insurance company? And I guess that was what led you to want to specialize in insurance for freelancers. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your kind of career as a freelancer and your journey to that.
Yeah, so my background is, I actually did both things alongside one another. My background is in insurance, but it was in a very different sector than what I'm doing now, which is insurance for freelancers, and I hated it. And so I decided it would be fun to explore the other thing that I had in my life, which was photography. And I ended up carving out quite a good freelance photography career for about, I think it was about 7 years. And I remember there were like several moments during my freelance career that made me think about insurance for freelancers. The first was when I actually started shopping for insurance as a freelancer. And it felt like none of what was out there was speaking to me in a way that I could actually resonate with. I was like, I have no idea how these products actually help me with the risks that I face as a photographer and the worries that I have. And I remember spending about £300 on an insurance package and not understanding a word of it, and just kind of crossing my fingers and hoping that I'd got the right thing, but also hoping that I'd never be in a position where I'd have to find out if I had the right thing. So that was like a first little moment where I thought this could be a lot better. The second thing was when I was towards the end of my freelance career, and I actually had quite an uncomfortable experience, shall we say, with a client. So I'd been commissioned to do a shoot for them. And as I did with all of my clients, I was like, as a photographer, I'm going to turn up and I'm going to take the photos that I think we need. But if there's anything that we absolutely can't miss, then please put it in the shot list. And they said to me, no, you just go and do your thing. Just go and exercise your creative control. And I think you can see where this is going. That's exactly what I did. And they came back to me with an essay about how much they disliked the photos. I'd missed that photo. They were so unhappy. And this wasn't just like a couple of lines in an email. This was an essay. And I think we've all been in those situations with clients where you're in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. It makes you feel, it's never nice to hear that somebody thinks you haven't done the job very well. And anytime your inbox pings and you see their name pop up, that feeling of anxiety surfaces. It was a really horrible situation to be in, and there was a lot of back and forth with the client. They were getting more and more aggressive with me. They were really just trying to push me down the road of returning the money that they'd paid to them, so they wanted a refund. And I felt like this was the moment, like the little light bulb moment in my freelance photography career, where I realized how beneficial insurance actually was. Because if I had been uninsured, I know that the way that I would have handled that situation, because I was so stressed out of having to, it was back and forth constantly, nothing that I said was working. They were just really pushing for a full refund. And I think that had I been uninsured, my natural reaction would have been like, do you know what, here's your money back. Like, just, you know, just get out of my life. I'm done with this. It's not worth the stress. But instead, I felt like being insured really flipped the tables, and I was able to actually force them to make a decision and back them into a corner. And I said to them, I've done the work and I've done it to a really good standard. My photos were good, trust me. Nothing that I suggest seems to be working. So I don't know where we can go from here. And I knew that by saying that to them, I was forcing them to make a decision, to do one of two things. One of them being, right, okay, fine, this just hasn't worked out. Let's just leave it and walk away, which is what I was wanting. Or the other scenario for them was to keep pushing for this refund, but to become more threatening with it. And I knew that I had my insurance ticking away in the background to help me if they did decide to become a bit more threatening and pursue it legally. So that whole situation, and they did actually come back and go, right, okay, then we'll just leave it. And they walked away and that was it, done. But it was a real light bulb moment about how insurance, most of us are never actually going to use the practical element of insurance, because I can tell you right now that less than 5% of our customers ever make a claim, but every single freelancer benefits on that level, that sort of aspirational, that confidence level of having it, because it helps you go into these situations with more confidence, and it helps you stand up for yourself so that you don't have to deal with the repercussions should it go a little bit further. So that was it was those two kind of moments and a few other bits and pieces that really led to me starting with Jack.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and it is just all about kind of being more confident, isn't it? So before we get into a bit more of like the nitty gritty questions, would you just be able to give us like a top line of what the different types of insurance are? You know, maybe approximately how much they cost, if you can say that.
Yeah, so let's try to keep insurance simple
and sexy. No, okay, just simple.
I can't promise that. Just simple. So professional indemnity insurance, that's probably one of the most complex covers, but I like to simplify it by thinking of it as insurance for mistakes you make or problem clients. So, and more often than not, it tends to be problem clients. So what's going to trigger that is either a threat of legal action from an unhappy client, or a client trying to recover money from you, so compensation or damages. And that, if you use with Jack, starts from £14 a month. Then you've got legal expenses insurance, which we find a lot of problems don't quite escalate to triggering your professional indemnity insurance, but you still need a little bit of advice, a little bit of guidance, how to handle conflicts and things. And that's when you would use legal expenses insurance, because you have access to a legal helpline, you have access to legal templates like late payment reminders, and then you also have a really cool service where a solicitor chases overdue invoices that clients have yet to pay. Then we've got contents insurance, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Not if you don't have the capital to go out and replace your equipment, if it was to break or be stolen or lost, then you would definitely want to insure it. This is our most used product. Like we get very, very regular contents claims through. They happen a lot. And then lastly, we have public liability insurance, which covers you for claims if somebody sustains an accident or an injury as a result of your work activities. And to be completely transparent with you, with Jack's been going for I don't know, over 5 years now, and we've never had a public liability claim because most of our customers work like this, remotely with a laptop or a computer screen. They're not operating heavy machinery. There's not a great deal of physical risk, but a lot of people buy it because it costs about £2.80 a month. It's very cheap, and some clients request it. I forgot to tell you the price of the legal expenses product. That's about £5 a month. And then contents, it's difficult to say because everybody has different machinery to insure, but you could insure a couple of £1,000 worth of contents for about £20–30 a year. So that's hopefully a very simple overview and the kind of price points that you can look at. Personally, I think insurance is very cheap for what it is.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, I want to cover all the questions. I mean, you probably have covered it in a sort of by and large, but some of the stuff, like the nuggets that you're coming out with, are just really simple. Like I find them really helpful. Like if you don't have the capital to replace your contents, then you'll need contents insurance. It's like, oh, a light bulb moment. But yeah, I want to ask the questions, all of the questions that I've seen come in. So one of the questions that you kind of might have covered in that answer was, what kind of business insurance do I need as a sole trader?
So legally speaking, you're not obligated to have anything. You can be completely uninsured and that's fine. You're not going to break any laws or anything. However, I like to think as a freelancer, irrespective of what service you provide, whether it's development, design, photography, you have a duty of care to your client. You have a responsibility to deliver work on time. You have a responsibility to deliver work to a certain standard. And if either of these things aren't quite achieved, and that's unfortunately not for you to say, that's the client who decides if you've met their expectations and you've met their standards. If either of these things aren't achieved, then you are at risk of an unhappy client. So I think that it's sensible to have insurance. Like I said, statistically speaking, you won't be one of the unlucky people. Like I said, less than 5% of our customers make a claim. But we also do know that when we get these sort of legal disputes, and not all of them have actually escalated to, there's like a bit of a misconception that insurance steps into action when you've got like solicitors banging on your door threatening to take you to court. It's not like that at all. I've never seen a situation as dramatic as that, but it can just be a client that's starting to get a bit more aggressive. Maybe they are, maybe they've put it in an email, like if you don't do X or if you don't provide us with Y, then we are going to consider legal action. Even these little things can get your insurance working on your side. And our claims typically cost, I haven't looked at the data for a while, so it could have changed, but last time I checked, our legal claims were costing upwards of £10,000. And it's really difficult for a freelancer to find that money. You're going to sell a car, you're going to have to remortgage your house, you're going to have to, goodness knows how to get that money. So that's why I think it's wise to be insured, because you have a duty of care to your clients. If for whatever reason you fail to meet your responsibilities, and the client decides that it's cost them money, whether it's loss of income from missing a launch or whether they feel like they've had to incur extra costs elsewhere by hiring other freelancers, all it takes for them is to kind of point their finger at you and say, well, that's your fault. Now we want you to cover the cost of that, for your insurance to be worthwhile. So you're not legally obligated to have anything, but I think every freelancer should at the very least consider having a professional indemnity policy just ticking away in the background.
So yeah, and at that point it's kind of up to you, like you said before, if you do want to choose to get contents, if you do want to choose to get public liability as well and things like that.
Yeah, and also what I would say as well is like the policy that if you buy something, like if you get a professional indemnity policy in place just to get started, it doesn't mean, like most insurers these days are very flexible and they allow you to kind of add bits and pieces to your policy as and when your business changes. So don't worry too much about getting everything in place from day one. You can get something basic to start with, and then as you're picking up more work, maybe you have a client contract and they say we need you to have public liability, then you can always add more to it down the line.
Okay, so just on professional indemnity, this is leading me to Kevin's question, Kevin Redfern, who is here today. He is a digital marketer specializing in PPC. I think it's fair to say, I'm right to say he works with kind of small to medium sized businesses. So his question was, I have professional indemnity insurance, which covers $1 million. Do I need that much?
That's a good question. Okay, so on the one hand, you're going to hate this answer, because obviously insurance is there for completely unpredictable situations. So it is actually impossible to say this is how much cover you should have. What we do find is that, as I said, the data we have shows that our typical claims come in around about £10,000. We've had claims that are £60,000. We've had claims that are £2,000. We've yet to have a claim exceed 1 million. So again, kind of statistically speaking, looking at the data, you're very safe with that level of cover. You would even be safe with £100,000 level of cover. But when signing client contracts, if you find that they have an insurance clause in their contract, it's typically £1 million that they always ask you to have. I don't know why that is. So do you need that much? I'm not going to say yes or no, because we just don't know what can happen. Anything can happen, but looking at the data, that's more than enough.
So if we were to insure with you, for instance, do we get to, are there different levels? Like, could we say, okay, I want £100,027 worth of cover, or is it like, okay, you have to kind of pick bog standard, like £250,000, £500,000, £1 million, £2 million, and like, what would the difference kind of be?
So insurers typically just have like, it goes up in increments, like 100,000, 500,000, 1 million, 2 million. We at the moment start at 1 million, but we are actually, what I'm trying to work on with the insurer is introducing a lower level of cover, so that we can offer this to people who are maybe just starting out and they just are looking for something a bit cheaper. But we start at 1 million. So yeah, you couldn't really customize it like I want £114,000 level of cover. It kind of does go up in those increments. But like I said, clients typically ask you to have 1 million, which is why we sort of start there, because it's a stipulation of a lot of contracts. I know that a lot of people these days are using websites like Juno. And again, they require you to have that 1 million PI, 1 million PL. So that's kind of where we start, but you can go lower than that. And statistically speaking, you should be fine. It should cover most situations.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of, again, weighing up the cost difference and whether it's worth it and things like that as well. And also if the insurer offers it.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. Does that answer your question, Kevin? I'm not going to pick on everyone. It was only Kevin just sent it in today, so I remembered that it was him, and I kind of knew he wasn't going to mind me calling him out.
Thanks, Kevin.
So, okay, next question. How do you cover yourself for working with clients and suppliers from all around the world?
So you have two options in this situation. When you buy insurance, you will find that all professional indemnity policies exclude US and Canada jurisdiction by default, because the cost of claims over there are typically much higher to defend, and they tend to happen a lot more often. So what you can do is either have the insurer extend the jurisdiction to include worldwide, and they can do that for an additional premium. So you would expect to pay more. I can't speak for other providers, but for us, it usually adds about £20 a month onto the premium. So that's one option. If you really don't want to spend that additional money, then what you could do is make sure that any US or Canadian clients are entering your contract. So they're signing your contract, and in your contract, you're stipulating that any claims will be handled under English courts or Scottish courts, UK law. I'm not a contract lawyer, so I would still suggest that you have a contract lawyer look over your terms just to make sure that they're watertight. But those are your two options, basically.
Okay, great, thank you. So there is a question about contracts. I don't know if you can help. So someone's asked, are there any contract templates you would recommend?
So no and yes. No, in the sense that I just think if you have the budget to have a solicitor draw a contract up for you, then definitely consider that option, because I had it done recently and it was amazing, because I basically just went to this solicitor and I said, here are all of the things that I'm worried about with this project. And then they were able to put all of these clauses in place to actually address the concerns that I had. That was priceless. It really gave me peace of mind. But I know that not everybody has the budget to do that. So there are definitely contract templates out there. I've never used them, so take these recommendations with a pinch of salt. They're not personal recommendations, they're just places that I know you can get contract templates from. One is hellobonsai.com. They have lots of different ones for photographers, designers. Andy Clark's Contract Killer, specifically for designers. There's a website called Coffee Clatch. That's coffee with a K and Clatch with a K. And they also have a lot of templates. And then they might be paid though, I'm not sure. You might have to buy them. And then there's also Rocket Lawyer as well. So you do have options, but if you have the budget, consider getting one created specifically for you, because like I said, it's great to just say to somebody, here's all of the worries I have about projects, and the solicitor can add in clauses to address those worries.
Yeah, okay, great. Maybe we can put those in the show notes, whatever the show notes look like. I think also pro copywriters have contract templates, and I don't know if they've got contract templates, but I know Work Notes, so the website Work Notes is really good for contract advice and kind of pricing guidelines and things like that. They're definitely worth a look at as well. But yeah, I'll collaborate a list of those, and when I send the video around, I'll get it out to everyone.
Ooh, and also just to add to that, if you are interested in either having a contract created from scratch or even just having your own contract reviewed, we're just about to partner with a law firm that have agreed like lower rates for freelancers. So feel free to reach out to me and I can put you in touch with them.
Oh, amazing. Right. Well, I'll put that in the notes as well, as long alongside your contact details. Okay, on to the questions. Okay, so again, we might overlap some of the answers, but I'm going to go through them all anyway. So what's the most cost-effective business insurance for freelancers?
So I think insurance is quite cheap anyway. Our prices start at £14 a month. I think that's reasonable, especially considering it's tax deductible. However, in terms of like, if you just wanted the cheapest policy in place, definitely find a provider that can cover you for £100,000 or £50,000. In that case, you would really just be looking for a provider that can give you the lowest level of cover. Like I said, that's not us right now. Hopefully in the future, we'll have a lower level of cover. But yeah, if you're just looking to get something really cheap in place, then definitely just choose something based on level of cover. But as with anything, be wary of things that are really cheap.
Buy cheap, buy twice, or buy cheap,
yes,
end up in court covering your own costs. It's the new slogan for bad insurance companies. Okay, next question. Would you recommend that all freelance journalists / copywriters should consider getting professional indemnity insurance? And if so, why? And they've said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, so obviously I'm biased. I'm going to say yes, right? Because I am in the trenches with freelancers, like helping them navigate some really awful situations. So I think that irrespective of whether you're a copywriter, developer, designer, whatever, that you should have insurance in place. The risks that a copywriter faces is actually a little bit different to the risks that a journalist faces. So with copywriters, again, a lot of it is just down to it's the client work that you're doing. So making sure that you are keeping things running on time, providing your deliverables on time to a certain standard. with copywriters, we have had claims where there have been like mistakes in the copy in terms of like typos, and then they're only discovered once something's gone to print, and then it's a very expensive process to reprint that. And obviously sometimes the client tries to recover the money from the freelancer, which would be covered under your insurance. Whereas with journalists, we do have a few journalists as customers, but it's not something we do a great deal of. But the risks are just slightly different there. You'd be looking at more wanting to cover the actual content that you're creating, because there are, you know, libel, slander types of claims there. So yeah, I'm biased. I think if you're offering any type of service to a client, then you should absolutely have insurance, even if, like I said, you're not actually going to use the practical element of it. It can still just give you that confidence going into projects, and making sure that you're not getting taken advantage of, and feeling confident to stand up for yourself. So that's why I think you should have insurance.
Thank you. Just talking a little bit more about sort of claims and stuff, can you tell us like some of the most common types of claims that you do see?
Yes. So most of our claims actually stem from poor project management processes, and that's not always the freelancer's fault. Sometimes clients just disappear and then they pop back up and expect you to pick up where you left off, even though they hadn't signed off in the work or paid you or given you the assets that you needed. So a lot of the times they're due to poor project management. So typically speaking, we see things like we see some ambiguity around the project scope, which means that the client and the freelancer aren't on the same page, and then the client's dissatisfied with the work that they receive. We see perhaps maybe either the freelancer has bitten off more than they can chew, and they've underestimated the time scale, and they deliver work late. And that can lead to claims of clients saying, well, we're now 3 weeks beyond where we thought we'd be with our launch, and we've estimated that we've missed out on X amount of income. Or we've had claims where there's been like a big website launch, and due to it running late, the client had spent a lot of money on PR costs. So they were drumming up a big buzz for the launch of something. And then because they either didn't launch on time or they launched without the features that they were advertising, they've tried to claw back the costs of the marketing costs from the freelancer. So a lot of project delays, that's a big thing. Things getting delivered late. A lot of confusion around the scope. That's another source of claims. And then we do also just have human error. Sometimes mistakes are made. We've had some, developers make technical errors with their code that has led to apps not functioning as they should. And it really just, it's a hard one, because all of these things can go wrong in any project, but it ultimately depends what kind of client you're working with, because some clients are going to be reasonable and some clients aren't. And the scary thing is that unfortunately that how your client responds to these types of situations is completely out of your control. And another thing that we've seen a big rise in is copyright claims. And it used to be we would get a lot of these with our design customers, like logos that look similar to something that already exists or typefaces. But something scary has come to my attention recently, which is where there's actually companies who are set up and their sole purpose is to go around and find images that have been used by their client, a photographer, without the correct license. And so then they come after you for, usually it isn't like a great deal of money, but it's a few £1,000s, which I don't know about you, but like not everybody has that just lying around ready to pay. So again, that's something your insurance can assist with, and we're seeing that happen more and more often. So copyright claims is a big one. But yeah, certainly just mostly project management issues. And also like with most of our claims, 58% of them involve some kind of payment dispute. So we're, things like clients refusing to pay your invoice alongside whatever other issue is happening. And what's really cool, there's a really good feature in the professional indemnity policy called mitigation costs. And that means that if there's a claim being brought against you and it's accompanied with an unpaid invoice, a lot of times the insurer will just pay you the money that's owed to you, because it'll avoid a claim from a greater amount. It'll avoid them having to, take the situation, escalate the situation with your client. So we find that that's also a really useful feature of insurance. So yeah, hopefully I kind of rambled a bit there, but
No,
hopefully that all made sense.
Brilliant. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You're not rambling at all. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. But yeah, I was just thinking, because it's what I was just thinking was, well, things keep every time you say something like journalist and photographs, I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, it's okay, I'm insured. I'm insured. But
yeah, it's scary though.
We're careful. But no, something happened to me. Well, not to me, but I heard about it for a big client I was working for, and a videographer. Well, I was on a project with a videographer, but I hadn't kind of brought the videographer on board, and they ended up creating a video for a big client, and I think they must have used music that they thought was kind of, you know, Creative Commons, was you know, like that they were allowed to use, but they weren't. And it was a few years later, I think, that someone picked up on it. And I suppose the other thing is that, you know, if they've seen a video that's got a few views or is being used by an individual, then maybe this company, like, they wouldn't have gone after them. But because it was being used by a big client who's generating like millions of pounds of revenue a year, they're kind of going to go after that client. But then the client is then going back to the videographer saying, well, actually, you know, you're the one that put this music on here. So I think it's just kind of, you know, bearing in mind, because I think sometimes, I don't know, don't want to drop myself in it, and I don't think like this, but I think a lot of people do sort of think, oh, well, if I'm putting something on my individual blog or something like that, then it's not really going to matter. But, you know, especially when you are doing it on behalf of clients, then it's gonna kind of escalate. It's going to kind of blow it up and blow up the amount of people that's going to see it and things like that. But, you know, obviously, even if you just do use it for your individual kind of one-man band or one-woman band, then it can still cause you problems, can't it?
Well, that's yes, like one of the claims that we had recently was the exact thing. It wasn't work for a client. It was just, in fact, we've had quite a few of them where it's just the freelancer has put an image on their blog, and it's what can you do if somebody rocks up and says, you've been using this without the correct permission, so we want you to pay us X amount? It's so hard to fight against that because you have been using it without permission. So obviously, in that case, what we tend to find with insurers getting involved is they are really good at negotiating like a lower fee to pay. And then obviously that whatever it is that's agreed to be paid is covered under the insurance too. But we're definitely seeing these claims happen more and more often. So that's another good thing about professional indemnity. It includes copyright infringement costs.
Okay.
Oh, and sorry, just thought something else. Just like when you were saying that about the videographer using the music, and then the client, obviously it being the client that maybe got the cease and desist or whatever letter they got. This is why you'll find that clients ask you to be insured, because if you make a mistake, they need to know that if that costs them money, that they can recover that from you. And at the moment, like if you're a freelancer, it's so hard to come up with the money to cover the cost of mistakes like that. Like, I don't know what they would have been asking, because it was quite a popular video, so I don't know what kind of damages they would have been asking for. But we'll find that that's why clients are asking you to be insured, because they need to know that if you make a mistake, their business isn't out of pocket for it, and that they can come and recover that money from you. So that's why you'll find that clients feel more at ease working with insured professionals.
Okay. But how does it work though, in terms of your insurance obviously isn't going to pay out if you haven't, you still obviously have to abide by the rules, don't you? So
yeah, it is. So it is unintentional. It should be unintentional. Like, if you, an example that the insurer we work with often give us is like, if you're an illustrator and you draw Mickey Mouse and then sell that and you get a claim for copyright infringement, there's no chance that they are going to be able to help you defend that claim, because it's so blatantly intentional. But with situations like that you've just talked about there with the music, and certainly the situations that we've had with the blog images, a lot of people just don't realize that they're doing it. It's not that they've been malicious and just stolen somebody's music or stolen somebody's photo. And also you'll find that the thing that I think you have to be wary of is that if you find an image to use on Flickr, right, and it's Creative Commons, under a Creative Commons license, and you feel safe enough using that, I don't know what the rules are around it, but isn't it easy enough for the photographer to change their mind and actually I'm going to change this image to all rights reserved? And it's really hard for you to say, like, you can make the case, well, I'm sure at the time I used this, it was Creative Commons, it was okay. But it's really hard to, it's a lot of the situations we find people aren't being malicious. They've maybe just made a little mistake somewhere, or maybe the license has changed. I don't know. But yeah, certainly if it was really blatant and you were like using like Coca-Cola's logos and stuff, and no chance there.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, we've got a couple more questions. If you do have any more questions, then please feel free to put them in the chat, or there'll be a bit of time at the end. But the penultimate one I think we have that's been sent in was, my better half is a self-employed VA. Her first client, the people who gave her the shove to get started, so kind of her big first client, dictate that she has to have public liability insurance and be a limited company. Ooh, corporation tax. Is there a way around this you can think of?
Yeah, something that I really try to drill into my customers is like, if a client comes to you with terms that you're not happy with, it's okay to push back on those terms. Let's do that more often. If they're coming to you and saying, we want you to have this, we want you to have that, and you don't want to have or do that, then just tell them that. So have the confidence to push back on any terms that you don't agree with. If they're really, if they aren't willing to negotiate on that, then maybe just try to compromise and say, look, my situation right now doesn't make sense going limited for all of these reasons. It's something that we can revisit 6 to 12 months down the line once the business is growing. But I am willing to have the insurance side of things, so we tick that box. So either just pushing back on terms, and a lot of times you'll find that customers, clients are happy enough to negotiate. That's what contracts are there for. Contracts are there to be negotiated. So let's negotiate the things that we're not happy with. Or if that doesn't work, then trying to see if they can reach a compromise. So no, I'm not happy to go limited right now. We'll be open to it later, but I'm happy to have the insurance side of things.
And there doesn't really seem to be a reason why you would need to be limited if you have the public liability insurance, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, insurance is there to defend you whether you're a sole trader or a limited company, so that doesn't really make a difference. I don't understand their reasoning for asking them to. I can understand why they're asking them to be insured, because we've already talked about that. They want to know that if they come after you for money, you've got it. I don't really understand their reason for asking them to be a limited company. I can't think why that would be.
Maybe it's kind of like some rule that's on their suppliers list or something that everyone, you know.
Oh, maybe it's some. Do you think it's something to do with? No, it wouldn't be something to do with IR35, would it? No. Oh, that stuff's such a minefield.
Yeah, I'll leave that to Ipsy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, it might be a good time for me to bring up. Well, I wasn't going to bring this up, but this is kind of reminding me of it. And, you know, kind of confession. I didn't have insurance for the first few years of being freelance. And I always thought, oh, well, I'm a limited company, so then I've kind of got limited liability, so I don't need insurance. Discuss.
I think that's quite a common. I think that's quite a common feeling. But again, like, my question is, it doesn't matter if you're a sole trader or a limited company, you still have all of these same responsibilities, right? And if that client decides for whatever reason that you're at fault for something, maybe there's less at stake if you're a limited company, there's less at stake, like they can't touch your personal assets, but they can still cause an awful lot of stress. And the thing that I want you to think about is, right now, if you have a really nasty legal situation, let's say with a client, what are your options right now? I'll tell you what I think your alternative options are to being insured. One of them is to go into a little community like this with other freelancers and say, I'm in this situation, I'm freaking out, can somebody give me some advice? And again, because you've got a lot of people who don't quite understand how insurance works, it's going to be an echo chamber of sometimes not so great advice. And sometimes they'll give you advice that makes the situation worse. The amount of times that I've seen developers tell people, well, if they've not paid for the website, just take the website offline, don't do stuff like that. But that's one of your options, is to go into a trusted community and ask for advice, and that's fine, but it's oftentimes not going to get you the best result. The other option you have is to go and actually speak to a legal professional. But whilst all of this stressful situation is ongoing, you're going to have to find a solicitor that's a specialist in the area that you're having an issue. What is it, a contract dispute? Is it copyright law? Is it a payment dispute? And in the jurisdiction that you're having the problem in, because it might not be a UK client, it might be a German client, it might be a US client. And you're going to have to pay the expensive upfront fee to have that conversation. So what insurance does is, I feel like it takes a lot of the burden away from you, because we've got this big network of solicitors in all over the world, in every area that your policy covers. The insurer can go and source you somebody to help you with that situation. And it removes a lot of well, you don't have to pay for that either. So it removes the financial burden. And also, I just think that in that moment where you're going through a really scary situation, it just helps to have somebody step in and kind of take care of things for you to free up your most important asset, which is your productivity. Because whilst all of this is going on, you've probably got other client work that you've got to do, right? So that's really the benefit, I think. They can come after you, whether you're a sole trader, whether you're a limited company. Yes, you have a bit more protection as a limited company, but I just think that it takes away a lot of the financial burden, and also the time element as well, of having to find the right solicitor to represent you and all of that scary stuff. Just somebody else is going to do that for you. You don't need to think about that.
And it is massively the mindset thing, isn't it? You were talking about before about being confident, but this thing I hear, one of the top two things I hear over and over again with the magazine is, like, advice for freelancers is, see yourself as a business. And I have had hundreds of clients myself. I have, I still get clients where I think, oh God, maybe I'll just do this bit of work and we'll just not have a contract, or like, you have to have the money conversation, and it still is a little bit awkward. But I'm just now like, let's just get this out of the way, because it is just I was talking to Letitia earlier, actually, I emailed her earlier saying, it's the easiest way to kind of get like spot those red flags early. And just to sort of think about insurance contracts, having the money conversation, it's really about seeing ourselves as businesses, isn't it? And like sort of really setting that standard, setting that level of expectations before we kind of enter into something. Because if we don't do that and we kind of get further down the line, then we never have kind of set those levels of expectations in the first place.
Yeah, you've taken the words out of my mouth. I feel like a lot of times as freelancers, we're guilty of going into projects and kind of giving the power to the client. Like, oh, I'm so grateful you're the one that's making sure I can pay all my bills for the next month or two. We need to flip that on its head. We should be going in on a level playing field, or even like, we should be the ones in power. We're the ones with the skill set. We're the one that's going to make this project, contribute to making this project a success. And I think as long as you have all of your ducks in a row, make sure you've got your contract so that there's a blueprint of what to do should little conflicts arise. Make sure you've got your project scope, and like you said earlier, explain it to me like I'm 5. I would strip that back and make it really simple so that there's no ambiguity around it. Here is what you get. Here is how many revisions you get. Here's the deliverables that you're going to receive. Anything outside of this then has to be, we then have to revisit the budget. We have to revisit the timeline. And I think just having all of your ducks in a row, and setting boundaries. So this is another thing I want my customers to do. or any freelancer to do is think about what your boundaries are. You don't necessarily have to tell the client what they are. You might have to if they start to overstep the boundaries, but think about what they are. I only reply to emails, for 1 hour a day, or I don't respond to support requests with less than 24 hours notice, whatever they are. Make sure you set and stick to those boundaries. And then I think that on top of all that, having your little insurance policy ticking away in the background, all of this stuff lets us go into these projects with more confidence and treating it like the business that it actually is.
Absolutely. I mean, I have started talking to it, but I've been thinking ages about kind of thinking about your business as a restaurant. So you wouldn't let a customer walk in and just order whatever they wanted. You would have kind of like it set out, and you wouldn't just be like, oh, just kind of, we'll talk about price later and things like that. So I just think it's, if you start comparing it to another business. And another interesting thing I thought about was Kevin and I are a member of something called the Digital Marketing Union, which is a really great kind of group of freelancers. But the other day we were having a chat, and someone said about kind of the thing about setting boundaries was, think about, like, if you were employed and your boss said to you, like, oh, I'm expecting you to reply to emails at 10 o'clock at night or 3 o'clock in the morning, or I'm not expecting you to take a holiday for the next 2 years, or I'm not expecting you to have a day off. Like, would you accept those things? So try and think about your boundaries as like, what if someone told you that these were your boundaries, would you think that that was fair, basically? Because we tend to put boundaries on ourselves that like are ridiculous, basically. So yeah,
I'm really stealing that restaurant analogy.
Oh, I've got a whole slide on it. I've got a whole deck on it. I'll send it to you.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense.
I'll put it in the show notes. Okay, we've had a question. We've got one more question but we've also had a question live from the chat from Craig, which I haven't properly read yet, so excuse me while I stutter. But I had a project that started last year, and well, you can read it as well, actually, Ashley. But I had a project that started last year and had a big time gap between the first half of the project and the second half. I took new work in that gap period. I now no longer can complete the original project. The client fortunately understood this, as it was their delay. However, in this case, if they had a problem with it, would the PI insurance help?
Yeah, I've heard this story like a million times, but with the not very understanding client. So yeah, provided there was, again, for your PI insurance to be triggered, there should either be a threat of legal action or the client trying to recover. Is Indy wanting out? Yes, she is. Or the client trying to recover compensation from you. We've had a lot of situations like this. But what I would really look at is how we can stop these things happening. In a minute, Indy, how we can stop these things happening in the first place. And I've talked about it on With Jack's blog, because a lot of the situations we see is the client just going off, suddenly being really quiet and going away and doing their own thing, and then popping up all this time later and expecting you to pick up where you left off. So I would look at adding a pause clause to your contract. This isn't something I've made up, but it's genius, and it's something along the lines of, I'll probably butcher the description, but if a client basically ghosts you, so if they don't sign off on the deliverables, or they don't give you the assets you need, or they miss a payment milestone mid-project, then it's in your contract that after a certain number of days, you can then cease all work on that project, right? Go off and do work with clients that are actually going to pay you and make sure that those projects are running on time. And then you'll reschedule that project back into your workload based on your current availability. And that really incentivizes clients to stay on track, because your availability you might not be available for another month or 2 months. So that kind of incentivizes them to stay on track. I've probably butchered the description, so Google it, pause clause. But yeah, PI insurance would be, we've had so many similar claims that result from that. And also another common thing we see in situations like that is where the client kind of pops back up and goes, well, if you're not going to finish the work, then I want the money back that I've already paid you for the work that you have done. And your insurance does not cover refunds, But again, going back to the whole story that kicked this conversation off, it should give you the confidence to say to them, no, because I've done that work, I've been paid for that work, it's not my problem that you've went off and disappeared, so that you're at least retaining the money that you've already been paid. But yes, that's a very common story that we see, unfortunately, and you were really lucky that you had a pretty decent client there that understood.
Although I suppose not many people phone you and go, hey, Ashley, I've just had a really nice client that's just understood. No. You probably get most.
No, I don't.
Do you want to let Indy out? We've got one more
she's
question.
Away now. She's lost interest.
Oh. Is there a squirrel in the garden or something?
I don't know what it was. She knows when I'm busy and she like tries to get attention.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Okay, last question from the questions that were sent in. I normally work direct and I don't really require insurance, but I've found some recruiters demand you have it. I'd want something that gives me the mobility of mixing between a couple of days and a couple of months whilst being affordable. I guess, is this possible, or what would you advise?
So I think it kind of ties into what was spoken about before, where it's like they're saying the recruiter. Wait, were they just saying the?
I think they mean like agencies. Like working through an agency, working via a recruiter.
Okay, yeah. So again, like we know why recruiters, agencies, clients, we know why they're asking us to be insured now, right? We know it's because just in case we make a mistake and they try to come after us for money, that there is actually money there that can be recovered. So we know why they're asking for insurance. In terms of having it for a couple of days or a couple of months, these days, most insurers are flexible. Like, we don't charge cancellation fees. However, I would not, what you have to be aware of with insurance is that you can't, for you to make a claim, for you to actually get value from your insurance, you need to have a policy in place at the time of the claim, but also at the time that the work was completed. And so if you're only picking up a policy for 2 days here or a month there, yes, you can do it, but you are playing with fire. And if I had customers coming to me and trying to do that, I would just be like, no, because if it comes down to you actually having to use your insurance, it's probably not gonna work.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of obvious when you say it, but it's not just when you did the work, it's kind of when people make a claim as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like, because you wouldn't buy house insurance when your house is literally on fire. Like, we all understand that, but for some reason with business insurance, people, I can understand why. It's a good question. I actually went to the insurer.
Or your restaurant.
Yeah, exactly. But I went to the insurer that we work with and I said, like, because we get a lot of people who are just like, can I get it for one project? And the insurer was like, it's not really a good idea, because then what happens is you get people insuring the highest risk project, and that means that the insurer's ultimately accepting more risk, and then all of our insurance premiums will go up anyway. What the benefit of insurance is right now is that it's so cheap. It's like a tenner a month, as I've said. So I think, I'm repeating myself now, but just having it in place, ticking away in the background, is the best option just in case.
Thank you very much. That's the end of all our questions. So is there anything you wish you could tell? I had someone ask the other day, I was like, such a clever question, which I'd put you on the spot, but I know we've probably covered most things, but is there anything you wish you could tell the room that you haven't mentioned?
Like, do you know, there's nothing. I feel like I have covered. I think I've covered.
Have we let you geek out sufficiently on insurance?
Yeah, but what I would really like from you, like from everybody here, is like, I want to understand what keeps you awake at night, because I guarantee that there will be elements of your insurance that can help with the things that you're worried about. But there's just this total disconnect between how insurers speak about their policies and how freelancers talk about their, the worries that they have or the risks that they think they face. And so nobody really understands how all of these things overlap. So I'm just going to ask for a favor. If like, nobody has to do it, but if anybody in here could send me an email telling me what it is that keeps you awake at night with your business, then I would love to just have that conversation about maybe how the insurance that's currently out there can assist with those worries. But also, I want to create my own insurance product from scratch. And so I want to learn more about the gaps in the market that we're not filling. So yes, I'm asking for that favor from you. If people could email and tell me what keeps them awake at night with their business.
Well, I'm also going to post this question on LinkedIn at some point soon. So yeah, Ashley Baxter wants to know what keeps you awake at night.
Specifically in relation to business.
Well, you know, we can open it up for a little bit. Has anyone else got any questions? This has been incredible. Like, I feel like there's been like the most amount of knowledge, you know, not just about insurance, but like loads of good kind of freelancing tips in general. You know, I know that you are a huge advocate for, you know, freelance confidence, being a confident freelancer, and the kind of everything that insurance does to support that. So yeah, it's amazing to talk about that as well, and kind of, you know, the business mindset. So yeah, has anyone else got any questions? We're like so bang on time. Hey Letitia.
Yeah, was it an hour?